Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. From the One King West Hotel in downtown Toronto, welcome to the Empire Club of Canada. For those of you joining us by webcast or podcast, welcome to the meeting. It's my great honor to welcome Anil Arora to our podium today. They say data is the new oil, our most precious resource, whose rise and fall can affect the national economy. And if that's true, then as the Chief Statistician of Canada, Anil has one of the most important jobs in the government today. In business and in government, we like to talk about evidence-based decision-making. Every day, our need and desire for data grows, data that is accurate, trusted, and accessible. Anil is a graduate of the University of Alberta, so sorry about the oil crack. He had been with Statistics Canada for more than 20 years, and after a brief time away, he was appointed Chief Statistician in 2016. As a longstanding member of the public service, Anil has seen our National Statistical Agency grow and evolve to meet the growing needs of businesses, nonprofits, and governments. It's because of Anil and his colleagues' great work at Stats Canada that we're all smarter about the country we live in. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Anil Arora.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you for that very warm and kind introduction, and I want to thank the Empire Club. What an honor it is for us to be here, and I say us because I've got a number of my colleagues strategically placed in the room here. Maybe I could just ask them to just raise their hands, and please seek them out. I see they've clustered, okay? So just make sure that you do take the time to meet with my colleagues here. I do also want to recognize the Indigenous territories on which we are gathered here today. I would like to thank Jan Kessel, National Post. I'd also like to recognize and thank Steve Orsini, who is with us today as well, and all the members, the distinguished members of the head table. And most importantly, I would like to thank all of you for being here today for me to share a little bit about our journey. So I think we're going to start, if we're right, with a little video. So I'm going to ask our folks over there to tee it up. Thank you.
All across Canada, every day, things are changing. Our population is increasing faster than it has in almost 50 years. Some of us were born here, and so were our parents and grandparents. We have strong connections to our land and history. And some of us chose to come here from other places, to find work, to chase a dream, to build a better life. Canadians now live and work in cities and urban areas. We work hard so that at the end of the day, we can play hard too. Go watch the game and cheer for the home team. See a play or a movie, or take the kids to a concert. Many of us also live in rural settings. Some of us work on farms, growing food for tables at home and around the world. And we're doing it without increasing how much water we use. That's good news for our most precious natural resources and our environment. But we don't just grow things in Canada. We make things here too, like cars, and parts for airplanes, and metals to build products here and abroad. But what binds us together is our shared values. Canadians know that access to health care is the greatest gift of all. And ours is a country where education matters, where children have the opportunity to learn and grow, where higher learning and research are valued and taken seriously. How do we know all this? Because behind every number, there's a person, a family, a relationship. Together, we write Canada's story.
So here we are in Toronto. multicultural capital city of the world. How many of you were not born here? How many of you have parents who were not born here? Just have a look at the number of hands that are going up. Did you know that 1 in 5 Canadians is an immigrant? And in Toronto, that number is 46%. And when you project that out to 2036, it'll be a shock, I think, to say that that number in Toronto will go up to 81%. In fact, our country is built on immigration. 2/3 of our growth in Canada today comes from immigration, and that number and that percentage continues to grow. The last quarter that we measured our growth was the fastest growth that we've ever seen in this country. I'd like to just tell you a little bit about this guy here on the screen. He came to Canada at the age of 11. That's not when he was 11. He's got a mustache. He got his first degree in the oil and gas sector in Alberta. So when you say that data is the new oil, well, sort of, there are some parallels, but I'll argue that as you use data responsibly, as you link it, it becomes more and more valuable, unlike oil. I worked, that's me, by the way, if you haven't figured it out. I worked in the private sector after graduating, got my second degree education in computing science, and then went on to work in all 3 levels of government. And, you know, like every immigrant in this country, it's a story of challenges and successes. And in a sense, that's what we do at Statistics Canada. We take each of those stories and we turn them into statistics. And I think, as the video said, we never forget that when we put a number out, we're really talking about a person, we're talking about a business, we're talking about our nation. And that reminder was so poignant just this last week with the Ukrainian Air tragedy. When you look at the Canadians and the individuals within that flight that perished, and you see the biography, you see their contributions to this country, it tells you about this important story of immigrants. And this is who we are. And these are the kinds of things, when put together, they shape where we're going. And so if you look at our immigration policies, you look at our labor markets, you look at our education, you look at our business growth, you look at our innovation, you look at our service sector, this is the compilation of all those stories. Toronto will see an influx of, give or take, 134,000 people on an annual basis this last year. Just think about that. What does that mean for you, your business? What does it mean for commuting? What does this mean for the environment? What does this mean for housing? What does this mean for your product marketing strategy, your kids' education, their hockey team or their soccer team dynamics? 54% of immigrants in this country come with a bachelor's degree. An additional 17% have postgraduate degrees. And that is twice that of the Canadian-born number. So it is enriching, in a sense, our education. And the OECD, I think, just put out recent numbers which said that we are by far, when you look at all forms of tertiary education, the most educated country in the world, in the OECD members. We are growing, as you know, but we're also getting older. We're an aging population. By 2036, upwards to 11 million Canadians will be over the age of 65. How many of us are going to be in that camp? What does this mean for our home care? What does this mean for old age institutions? What does this mean for labor market? What does this mean for consumer demand and how it's shifting in our pensions? Lone parent households today, do you believe, make up the largest percentage of households? 28%. 26% of those with children and couples with and couples without children. Just think about that. And many of them are women. And you think about their choices. Many of them are choosing to live alone, and more and more. 40% of young men have never been in a committed relationship. What does that mean for social inclusion and the policies around that today and into the future? The need for good quality facts and data in a society where we are seeing massive changes has never been greater. And I'm talking about changes like globalization, I'm talking about the emergence of the digital and the platform economy, I'm talking about climate change, and I'm talking about our shifting demographics. How do these impact different groups, different geographic locations in this country, different industries and sectors? And how are they pushing the need for facts beyond averages and beyond the country and the provincial level? The need for breakdown by neighborhood and community level data has never been more important. And not what happened 2 years ago, not historical past, but what is happening today. What is happening now? That is the need. And just like society does not stand still, neither should the institutions that serve. And Statistics Canada has been and will continue to be a world leader in providing high-quality, credible, independent, and timely facts for you to make decisions precisely because we lead. First to chair the United Nations Statistical Commission, among the first to develop, adapt, and integrate the system of national accounts, integrating economic and environmental statistics, online census taking. Did you know that in 2016, nearly 70% of Canadians filled out the census questionnaire online? Nobody comes close in the world. Putting a value to data in our society and in our economy, the first to do that in the world. That is what Statistics Canada does. We experiment and we innovate. The kind of work that we're doing on opioids, the kind of work that we're doing on cannabis, and I'll tell you more about some of our innovations in a minute. We provide the underlying fact base that is needed to make decisions. It is the trusted, credible, and independent source of official statistics. And in fact, in 2017, the government brought in legislation to further strengthen the statistics, the independence of Statistics Canada. And I'll say that it matters more than ever that you know what we do and what we are doing, and that we partner and that we shape this relationship, and we need you to be active participants in this modernization journey that responsibly maximizes the use of data. Our sole purpose is to serve Canadians. It is public good. We serve our citizenry, our businesses, our NGOs, our media, our policymakers. We are not a competitor. Just like the fish in the water does not compete with the water around it, our relationship with the data ecosystem is one of interdependence and symbiosis. And as you may know, 90% of the data that we have today was created just in the last 2 years. And if you go back 2 years, it's the same trend, we've seen it. And in fact, with billions of devices, whether it's your Fitbits, whether it's sensors in cars, whether it's sensors on bridges, you name it, to microsatellites that are being launched today, we are just about to see that explode. That volume of data is unfathomable. Ironically, we have never seen as much data, and at the same time, we have the need for more and more credible, fact-based intelligence. The questions are, in fact, much sharper. It is not just about the what, but it is about the so what, and it is about the now what. Data are not only required to understand the underlying issues, but also to measure the impact of the decisions on the outcomes that are being sought. And the decisions are not one action, one response, but more and more multidimensional and integrated. Our economy, our society, and the environment are all interrelated, and the data infrastructure has to show the interplay between decisions and outcomes. There are many questions we face in today's data-driven society and our economy? To what extent are intangibles shaping our economy? How much income is generated by the household sector today? To what extent are digital services displacing traditional employment? Are we capturing the true extent and impact of platform data-driven firms? How is investment changing domestically and internationally? What implications does this have on productivity? How are global trade flows changing? And what does this mean for our company's competitiveness and our jobs of the future? The number of gig workers, for example, these are unincorporated self-employed freelancers and on-demand workers hired for jobs mediated through platforms like Uber, TaskRabbit, and so on, grew from 1 million in this country in 2005 to 1.7 million in 2016. The median net income for a gig worker was $4,303 in 2016. Half of those who entered the gig economy did not continue the next year, but over a quarter of them, in fact, remained in that situation for 3 years or more. Gig work is more prevalent among immigrants. The nominal GDP for the digital economy grew by 40% between 2010 and 2017. And in contrast, our economy in that same period grew by 28%. Nominal GDP of digital economic activities totaled $109.7 billion in 2017 alone and made up 5.5% of the total economy. More than mining, quarrying, and oil and gas extraction, transportation and warehousing and utilities combined. And what about cybercrime? Well, in 2017, 1 in 5 businesses reported that they were impacted by cybersecurity incidents. This is the kind of stuff that only Statistics Canada is doing in the world when you look at the value of data and the kinds of things that we're putting out. As a governor of the Bank of Canada, my friend Stephen Poloz reminds me, we need to get a better measure of the digital economy, from retail sales that are not covered by domestic retailers, household spending online, how many of you buy things on Amazon or eBay, how prices are adjusted online more frequently than they are on shelves, and the potential impact that this might be having on the consumer price index. Exclusion of tangible assets, like the value of data from the GDP, could in fact distort our productivity figures. And these matter to all of us because policy decisions are based on these figures. Clearly, we are not alone, and we are working as leaders in the international community on these data gaps and issues. Traditional surveys, instruments, and sources of data won't answer these types of questions in a timely manner that we need in society today. Surveys are experiencing declining responses. People are busy. Surveys are costly. And they take time. In most cases, 18 months from the time you start to the time you finish. Alternate sources of data are increasing exponentially, and we have the techniques and the mechanisms to convert them to public good with high-quality statistics. Administrative sources, satellite imagery, cell phones, credit data, and transactional data, they are all providing the opportunity to answer some of our deepest questions in our society and our economies. We can provide good quality facts and protect privacy and confidentiality. This is what Statistics Canada has been doing for 100 years. We are not about to change that formula to citizens. And this is our modernization journey at Statistics Canada, and we are well underway. It's not a theory, it's not something we'll do in the future, it's something that we are doing today. The kinds of things that we're putting out on cannabis use using wastewater sampling, the clean tech sector and the low carbon economy and the shifts to it, housing and the impact of foreign ownership, Ag Zero, an initiative to, in a few years, essentially provide all our agricultural statistics without burdening a single farmer, scanner data to supplement our consumer price index, and providing the value of data. These are all the kinds of statistics that we're doing today in using responsibly alternate sources of data without adding significant cost and burden to Canadians. We are providing richer and more integrated analysis and interactive interfaces. Just go to our website if you haven't recently and look at the work that you can see there on whether it's our economic statistics on the energy sector, whether it's trade statistics that were used prominently in our negotiations recently. We are doing our part to help the Government of Canada better use data. We developed and co-authored a data strategy, and I encourage you all to have a look at it and see how we can partner, not just within the government, but with the private sector, with NGOs and others, to use data responsibly. We are investing in enabling and secure infrastructure. The current structure will not serve us well going forward. You may have read in the news recently, we are moving to a protected cloud infrastructure. We are using data as an analytics service. So not only do you have access to more microdata and interfaces, but you can actually have the power to analyze it on your desktop. We are strengthening privacy even further. We are putting in measures of proportionality and necessity at the stage of ingesting data, not just at the point where we put out products. We are increasing transparency. Have a look at our trust center. We need to do a better job, and we are doing more and more so that Canadians know what we do, why we do it, and how we do it, and why it matters to them. We are investing in our people. We're investing in data science, in artificial intelligence and machine learning. We are advancing mobility and flexibility and wellness initiatives within our midst. And that's the reason why we get a number of awards, being the best employer, being the best youth employer, and so on. We are very proud of the 5,500 people that are gathered as the world's best in what we do. We lead internationally. You may not know this, but we guide the future of economic statistics. We sit and are prominent on the United Nations Statistical Commission, working with the OECD in modernizing official statistics. We are shaping standards and building data literacy and numeracy. We chair the Data Collaborative under the Standards Council, as well as under the government's digital charter, on building a roadmap of standards with the kinds of interactions that happen between businesses and governments, citizens and businesses and governments, and consumers and businesses. We're active on the CIO Executive Council. We did the first data conference where people could see the value of data and the value of collaboration. Courses and videos so people can learn to use data in responsible ways. We do university partnerships. We are building, in partnership with universities, the future data scientists that we will need in society. And we are increasing accessibility and reach. If you go to any one of our 31 research data centers, you will see an enriched microdata set source along with ways in which to properly use and to be able to bring research that is so vital to all of us as Canadians. You look at our data service centers. We have taken all our data, our regional centers, and we've turned them into data service centers. There's one right here, and Nancy Garino is the director of the service center right here in Toronto. We are there for you. And partnerships and collaboration are going to be essential and absolutely key on our journey. So I thank you today for giving us the opportunity to share with you what we are doing and why it matters more than ever. And I'd be pleased to take a few questions. Thank you.
Anil, thanks so much. I'm going to, if anybody would like to ask a question, there are some mics, and we'll have no trouble doing that. But first, so Stats Canada, you say tops in the world. You've said you talked about that a few times. As a Canadian, I think that's probably underappreciated. So you're a data guy. So what benchmarking, by what standards are we able to sort of proudly make that claim?
Well, a few years ago, in fact, The Economist did a benchmarking survey, and we did come up top. So if you want to Google that and have a look. Now, that's getting a little dated, but I would say the degree of involvement that Canada has, and Statistics Canada has, in responsibly using data and turning it into official statistics, the role that we play. So the United Nations has something like 42 committees, while Canada either chairs or co-chairs or is actively leading on 22 of them. I co-chair the work with the high-level group on modernization of official statistics. We co-chair the work with the Conference of European Statisticians. So, in fact, in many cases, we have to turn down offers to lead and move initiatives forward. Canada has always been a leader in this area, and we are playing even more and more a prominent role.
Right. So I'm sort of struck by the idea of how, there's a lot of talk by politicians and government about making evidence-based decisions. And you talked a lot about everything you do, and maybe you could sort of explain a little bit how that works out. Maybe this would work, but you talked about the gig economy. Mm-hmm. So what implications does that have for policymakers to better understand that, and how does that in turn, I guess, inform sort of smarter public policy from our government?
Well, I think the unfortunate part is that many people look at us and say it's a well-kept secret. And that is true, and unfortunately it's a problem, because there is no way we should be a well-kept secret. We should be a household name. You should be looking at Statistics Canada to provide that underlying fact base. And when you think about it, we're not just a passive provider of statistics. When you look at the number of seats in the House of Commons, they're determined by census counts. When you look at all the HST payments that go back to provinces, they're based on the work that we do on the kinds of expenditures that are going on in this country. You look at the rates at which our pensions get indexed. They are based on the work that we do on household expenditures and consumer price indices. We want to make sure that somebody gets tied over, if they are unemployed for a period of time, the amount of remuneration that they get in the period and the eligibility that is set by policy is in fact determined through a survey that we do every single month called the Labor Force Survey that implicates 56,000 households. So we are ingrained in that fabric of how decisions get made that impact us and our loved ones each and every day. And I could go on with similar statistics on how businesses use it to determine how many foreign and temporary workers they might need, what kind of product they might have to put on their shelves in a particular area based on the demographic and the geographic, the mix of people in a particular area. So the statistical infrastructure is an essential fabric. It's an essential piece of what we do each and every day. And as I mentioned, it is becoming even more and more important because people are starting to see the value of data. And as the volumes start to increase, the need for the expertise on how to use it responsibly grows even more today.
Perfect. I think we have a question down here.
Great. Anil, thank you so much for inviting me today and for your leadership. As the former Secretary of Cabinet, first Minister's meeting I ever attended with the head of Stats Canada period was with Anil. Met Prime Minister Trudeau and a number of premiers to talk about the importance of data. So here's my question to you, and it's one that we had private conversations on. The province is sitting on a ton of data. It's like oil stranded in the ground. And we have 5 billion plus of imagery, CAT scan, PET scans, MRIs, you name it, as a single pay on the province. There's such a fear of people saying, well, we don't want to share our health data. But is there a world where you could identify, anonymize the data, allow researchers to develop whole new algorithms to actually improve healthcare? Can you see a world where the public would accept it, privacy commissioners would accept it, and really advance? One of our competitive strengths is our healthcare system.
Thank you, Stephen. I very fondly remember our discussion a few years ago. And I think that vision is achievable in Canada. It is something that many provinces are doing today. If you look at the work that BC is doing in bringing together education and labor market data, working with us to determine what are the kinds of education pathways that are going to yield success and growth into the future, it is precisely because we can start to link the kind of data that we have in responsible ways, which means in many cases anonymizing the data, putting it together, and seeing what are the kinds of responses. The work that we did with Saskatchewan on recidivism and the impact between the justice system and the health system and the social system that is present. It is absolutely illuminating to see the kinds of interventions and the kinds of impacts that they can have. As I mentioned earlier, it is an interrelated world. Investments in housing, how much do they count as opposed to investments in education or support services? The work that we did on opioids, again, it is about responsibly linking data from municipal sources, federal sources, and provincial sources to try and get a better handle of what happened, what is going on in that crisis, and the kind of information that we put out on the profile of those lives lost and the trace that they're leaving behind as potential policy interventions for us. So absolutely, it is a complicated ecosystem. We have laws, we have all sorts of work to do in being able to portray to Canadians that this is a responsible way for us to move forward, that we can in fact protect their privacy and the confidentiality of their information and use infrastructure in a way that is beneficial to our population and to our businesses. This is a strategic advantage, I believe, of this nation, and we are starting to see more and more of those partnerships coming together. The last point I'll make there is that the partnership between the private sector and Statistics Canada and government in responsibly building data strategies together, that is the kind of work that Environics Analytics is doing, for example. These are not theoretical, these are happening today. We just need to talk about more of these and explain to Canadians why it matters to them and why this is an imperative for Canada.
Great. One last question. Do you think of, we see data pushing into new areas all the time, so I'm a sports fan, and we talk, first in baseball with sabermetrics, now it's even pushing into sports that you think are so random it would be hard to sort of pull data out, but we see it with hockey now, and stats heads will talk about expected goals and these type of things. Maybe you could talk a little bit, if you in your crystal ball and you look ahead, like where's data pushing in to unexpected areas that we may not, imagine today?
Well, let me give you an example. We were confronted with obviously the legalization of cannabis, and we wanted to know a little bit more about before it became legal. What was the consumption, and we wanted to be able to track not the economic impacts and the price impacts and consumption impacts, but also find out after it became legal, what was the shape of the illegal market as opposed to the the regulated market, and it's unleashing the talent and the innovation of people. And somebody came up within Statistics Canada with the idea that the answer belonged in wastewater. So now you might think, well, what kind of data is laden in wastewater? Well, it just so happens that when we go, we leave a trace. And you can actually measure that trace. And in fact, the region, the area that a water treatment plant kind of puts together. Well, you can now get a denominator of what's coming out of that area. A regulated market tells you what is being put into that particular area, and the difference between that is the illegal market. So, there is data everywhere. It is the ingenuity to be able to look in it and to be able to convert that into intelligence. And now we're looking at it and saying, well, what other traces are in the wastewater that can perhaps help us determine, potentially crises like opioids or acetaminophen, microbials and other drugs, and so there are many other uses. Wouldn't it be great if we were to able to see that emerging crisis and be able to take policies and actions to be able to target interventions and to prevent, if you like, worse outcomes. So, yeah, it is being able to see the interactions that are happening, be able to see the trace, which is usually the data that is there, and then turn it into intelligent ways to make sense, and then make that available to policymakers to be able to make good decisions that impact us all.
I asked about unexpected areas, and you went to wastewater, so I think that is a question asked, properly answered. We do have one more question.
Hi, thank you for your talk. It's wonderful to be here. My name is Marcy Birchfield. I'm the Vice President of the Economic Blueprint Institute at the Toronto Region Board of Trade. And I want to sort of put two things together, this sort of new face of Statistics Canada and the role of Statistics Canada in really broadening that discussion around data governance. You talked about, Stats Can's kind of respect around the world, globally in the United Nations, and one of the most granular pieces of information comes from these phones. When we talk about neighborhoods and that, and we have a project here in Sidewalk Labs that's really what got ahead of that project was the data governance, the lack of data governance. And so my question is, what is StatsCan's role in the larger question of data governance and making sure that we're creating standards that are kind of globally applicable?
Yeah, and I think it is an evolving context. First of all, when you look at an institution world class where you've got close to 6,000 experts, that's all we do is look at responsibly converting, if you like, those signals into things that are consumable and meaningful and statistically sound and replicable, and you can see both the limitations as well as the strengths of what we do. We believe now that what we do and how we go about doing it can be of greater value to all of society. And that's why we're taking a more active role in developing standards, in convening tables, in working with our universities. We're bringing in types of standards and ethics, and so that we can actually share what we have done for 100 years with a society that is now saying, look, there is value to be gained here. How do we do it in responsible ways? And now, we are learning as well. So we're not perfect. Obviously, we sometimes get ahead with our enthusiasm, and in many cases, we have to cycle back a little bit and say, wait a second, people need to be brought along. People need to understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and all the checks and balances that are in the place. So we're also teaching some of the lessons, if you like, that we've learned the hard way. But it is a team sport, and we want to be part of the solution of continuing to build this nation. As I mentioned in the examples, we have always been an active part in democracy and the trust that's there with citizens. And as data becomes more and more prevalent and as it gains greater value, I think we can and are prepared to play a more active role on data governance, on standard setting. We can share our capacity. That's why we're turning our organization inside out, so that you can come to our data service centers, you can reach out to our folks. We're putting more and more information on the web so that you can use it in responsible ways.
Anil Arora, everybody. I'm going to ask Jan Kessel to come up and provide a proper appreciation.
Thank you. Well, it's been a great pleasure for me and our team from Environics Analytics to be the sponsor, and also as a director of the Empire Club, to have Anil share his perspective with you. I'm not going to do a commercial. We did give you a little bit of information about what we do in taking data in partnership with Statistics Canada and a wide variety of other organizations to make it actionable and help businesses make data-driven decisions. But I want to particularly express my appreciation to Anil for making it real. I think the most important thing is for Canadians to understand what a treasure they have in Statistics Canada, how in this modern Western world culture where nobody trusts their government, how Statistics Canada can be trusted, has a track record around confidentiality, quality, and the production of statistics that we really need, how official statistics can help make big data better and real. And I'm very old, so I've been working for 5 decades with Statistics Canada. I've worked with, one chief statistician was there for a long time, but I have worked with all the chief statisticians in Canada for the past 5 decades, and I have to tell you, this man, with his modernization work, is pioneering what we need to have happen. Yes, Statistics Canada is a leader in the world, but they are moving us forward. And one of the reasons why I was happy that Anil would come here today is I think the business community and the government community and the not-for-profit community in Canada needs to understand that as we develop a data strategy for the country and deal with many different federal government departments, with provinces, privacy commissioners, private sector organizations, I'm an advocate, and I'd ask you to join me in being an advocate for Statistics Canada as the protector of methodology, the trust provider around privacy and security for data. I think that Statistics Canada should be at the core of Canada's national data strategy, and that's a good thing for Canada. And if people just heard the stories and understood the integrity and the initiatives that are taking place, more and more people would get behind Statistics Canada to play this important role in our data future. So I thank you for inspiring us with that message. And on behalf of the Empire Club, too, I'm so appreciative that you joined, and hope you'll take the messages that Anil has brought back to your communities so that we can continue to be a data-driven society.
Wonderful. Let me just say in closing that Statistics Canada does have booklets of facts and stats that are available at the exit. Please feel free to grab one of those. As well, I'll tell you that tomorrow we have a couple events for those who might be able to join. We have Minister McNaughton from the Ontario government, the Minister of Labour, Skills and Training. In the evening, for those interested in a more raw expression of politics, we have the Ontario Liberal Leader debate taking place. You can get tickets for those on our website. Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.